Hi there, and welcome along to a very, very special episode of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the totally free and independent Rangers podcast that's created by the fans and for the fans. And if you're asking why is this a special episode, well, we're delighted to say that we've reached the ton. It's episode number 100 from a wee show that started probably two and a half, 3 years ago. We've come a long, long way, spanning 4 seasons. Plenty of wins, plenty of frustrations, many of which will be aired tonight. But I don't think any of us expected we'd ever get this far, so we're absolutely thrilled that you'll be joining us. My name is Ross Bennett, and I'm delighted to be your host to take us through this evening. Remember, guys, that the podcast is not the only content that we have over at Gersnet. We also have the website, which is www.gersnet.co.uk, where you'll find loads of match previews, match reviews, plenty of interesting insight and articles, as well as the very friendly discussion forum, where you can find myself and all of the other contributors from the podcast, and you can engage in the witty banter. Remember that the pod, whilst we're on 100 shows now, so we can't really call ourselves a new show, we still always appreciate a like and subscribe, so make sure that you do that wherever you get your podcast from. We are live as usual tonight on Sunday night. It's 9:30 on the 16th of August. So if you are listening live, then thank you very, very much for giving up your weekend to join us. If you're not listening live, well then welcome along if it's your first time with us as well. Please do bear in mind that next week you'll have to listen live and get involved in the chat that goes on the YouTube stream as well. Remember that the podcast is available to download from Monday mornings. That's available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, Castbox, Acast, and anywhere else that you can think of that I have not named there. To get us through this evening, obviously we were expecting maybe to have a bit more of a celebratory mood, a bit of a party atmosphere. Thankfully, Stephen Gerrard and his men took care of that and dampened their spirits over in Livingston this afternoon. But we're still going to do our best to get through the day. So to join us on a very, very special episode, we have 2 of the greatest contributors to the Gersnet podcast, one of the old guard and one of the slightly newer frame as well. First of all, it is the wonderfully talented David Wren. David, good evening. How are you doing?
Hello, Ross. No, it's quite fitting that it should be a banter scoreline today, given that this podcast is a banter years era podcast like many others. So yeah, good to come on and have a moan. You know, that's the Rangers that we know and love. So yeah, I'm sure it'll be good regardless.
See, the banter years tag is one that can get a few people quite upset because everything that happened to us wasn't banter, it was criminal and all the rest of it. I quite like referring to us as the banter years. What would you say? We've been spanning 4 seasons now, David. Is there one particular piece of banter that sticks in your mind as a highlight of that time?
One. See, now I've said that, it's quite actually difficult to think of one. It's got to be the Progress result, surely. That was a dark day. Yeah. But there has been many. There has been many. But recently it's been good. I mean, Stephen Gerrard certainly got us in the, regardless of today's scoreline, I think we're in a really, really good position now. And I think actually, in fairness, this, as we refer to the banter years, I don't think they are anymore. I think, last season and certainly the season before that, Gerrard's got us to a point now where, we're challenging again. We're a force in Europe again. So, yeah, hopefully that's all behind us. And I think that the future is bright, especially under Gerrard. Regardless of today's result, regardless of how many moans we're going to have tonight, I think the future of the podcast and the future of the club is looking bright.
Absolutely. And look, we need results like today's in order to keep us grounded and remember where we've been over the past decade. Otherwise, we wouldn't want to be opening up too big a lead over Celtic and thinking that we're a club that's, not prone to the banter. Also with us this afternoon, it's, like I say, one of maybe the newer guard of the Gersnet podcast, but an excellent contributor in his own right. It's someone who, in the week, described himself as the Dan Egan of Gersnet. But considering that he's kind of come from nowhere to take centre stage on one of our most important fixtures of the season, I much prefer to think of him as Gersnet's Moses Ashikodi. So a very warm welcome to Alexander Anderson. Alec, how are you?
I'm not bad, guys. Not bad at all. Well, that's a complete lie. I'm absolutely terrible. And congratulations to yourselves. Congratulations to Frankie, to Stuart, the boss, everybody that's put Gersnet together for the last 99 pods. And I'm just feeling a bit like, or Frankie must be feeling a bit like Roger Sterling in that episode of Mad Men where he's he'd paid for the big lavish wedding for his daughter, and then the day before JFK gets shot. I'm feeling a bit like Dan Egan, as I say, because I remember a couple of months ago the BBC were rerunning the title celebrations, or the last game of the season in 2003, and against Dunfermline, beat them 6-1 at the end of it. And that was at the game, obviously, and then it's showing you the podium at the end, and I'm thinking, Dan Egan, how the hell did he manage to get a medal? I don't remember him playing once, but I'm hoping I've maybe elevated myself to being as deserving of being involved in these celebrations as Howard for the Halifax.
Halifax Howard, who gives you extra? No, absolutely. And if nothing else, I think everyone listening should be reminded that getting to 100 episodes is probably a bigger achievement than winning the title on the final day. So look, gents, obviously it's an excellent kind of day for us as a wee band of Rangers supporters, getting to a pretty important milestone in our wee journey. A sad day as well for Rangers Football Club in terms of the result, but another sad week, sadly, for Rangers as a club off the pitch. Unfortunately, we at Gersnet we do have to mark the passing of Tom Forsyth, who was kind of a stalwart of Rangers in the late 1970s and early 1980s. A player who racked up countless appearances and was, like I say, a stalwart of a really impressive blood and thunder Rangers side, and a Rangers side that a lot of Gersnet contributors grew up with. And I know that when I have conversations with maybe some of the older podcast presenters and guests that we have on the show, the memories that they have of that side, Tom Forsyth is one of the names that comes up time and time again. And it's a shame in my right that I was born too late and never got to see him play. So I just want to take a moment before we get into the football today to pass on sympathies from everyone at Gersnet to Tom's friends and family, and remember the legacy that he's left behind. Moving on from that, we'll start by taking a look today at the Livingston game. As we record it Sunday evening, so it's only a few hours ago that the final whistle was blown. After that, we will move on to a slightly happier performance against St Johnstone in the week. And then we will finish up the show this afternoon by addressing the COVID-19 situation with Aberdeen and Celtic leading the way in the COVIDiad count. And we'll sort of ask, are clubs doing enough? What punishment is befitting? And is it really possible to go to Spain without your club knowing? But first, we have to address it. We have to get it out of the way. The Livingston result this afternoon, the first dropped points of the season for Rangers, although we do still keep a kind of clean sheet across the season so far with no goals conceded. David, I'll come to yourself first of all. Can you give me your kind of general overview of the match this afternoon and just how frustrating was it for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it was all too familiar. I think was the most disappointing thing about it. It looked like a game from the past couple of years where we've gone to a difficult place and struggled to break a team down. I think, Livingston sat in frustrated, played more or less a back six, which I don't actually blame them for. I think that these clubs, they know how to play against us. They want to get a result, and I personally don't see much wrong with that. It's up to us to then break them down. I just think too many of our players today didn't show enough. I think midfield was very, no one was really taking responsibility, and I think that extended to the strikers as well. No one really willing to take a shot from the edge of the box. I mean, how many times did Kamara, Jack, Arfield get the ball on the edge of the box, and instead of at least trying to make something happen, they would just play a square ball there, try and give up the responsibility, pass it on to someone else. I thought one player who did well was Barisic. I thought he was excellent, really unlucky not to score with another free kick. But yeah, I mean, it's frustrating how familiar these results are, and I just felt that given the situation and given Celtic's situation, the fact that they won't play for a wee while, or certainly we'll miss a few games, was a real opportunity for us to pull ahead, albeit with games in hand. And now it just feels like we've sort of done what we couldn't do, which is drop points and at least let them draw level if they win the games in hand. And it's just frustrating. I think for everyone watching it, and we'll cover it in more depth than this tonight. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things there that just didn't impress me, and it looked early on, that was the way the game was going to go, and it took until maybe the 83rd, 84th minute before we actually started turning the screw. And I mean, we all know you just can't afford to do that. You need to take responsibility, and you need to start realising the situation a lot earlier than the last 10 minutes, and that was really disappointing.
Yeah, I completely agree that it was frustrating, and it was 82, 83 minutes that we started playing with a bit more pace, or even just started with a bit more speculative, hopeful long balls into the box, which was, as you say, David, how many times did that midfield three have the ball 18, 20 yards out and just fanny about with it, rather than showing a bit of guile or just having an effort on goal. We were kind of saying before we came on air that their goalkeeper was making his debut today, and he's been signed from English non-league. So whilst he's obviously not, he's gone and made a fairly spectacular save from Barisic's free kick, he's unlikely to have two of them in him in the same game, and you have to put him under some pressure and test him and try it out and have a go. But you see the ball, whenever the ball breaks to Ryan Jack or Glenn Kamara on the edge of the 18-yard box, they look afraid to have a shot. They look afraid to sky it or put it wide or whatever. But it got to the point today, like you say, after 15, 20 minutes, you could see how this game was going. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but you're sort of crying out for someone to just try something different. Just have a go, put the ball in the box, or put the ball on the goals, and just try something that's not a Ryan Kent step over and then running into traffic.
I think I completely agree. And I think the frustrating thing as well is we have had Morelos on our team for 3 years now, and we all know he plays best ball to feet, back to goal. And I mean, we barely played that ball into him once today, and then Kamal Roof comes on as well, and again he's another one that likes the ball to feet in the edge of the area, and again we just didn't do it. It beggared belief really that we were so one-dimensional, and Livingston, as you say, I mean, the goalkeeper making his debut there, and he made a fantastic save. Don't get me wrong, it was a great save from Barisic, but really, that was the only proper save he had to make. And then straight after that free kick, I think Cormac came in, he's flat-footed it, and then there was actually a half chance there. We didn't make the most of that. Then Morelos, back post, heads it over the bar from 8 yards, and you're just thinking, Jesus, I mean, really, really, again, frustrating, and all our own doing, it felt like, as well. I mean, we could have, there was just a lot we could have done, and that's the most frustrating thing, that there was so much we could have done that we just didn't, and we played the same way for 80, 85 minutes, and never once tried to take the game to them, and that's maybe unfair to take the game to them, but to certainly try something a bit more direct, because it was the same build-up play all the time. First half really poor, second half slightly better, but just not enough. And we need to, I mean, the stats show over the past couple of years that the majority of points we've dropped, and what's actually cost us getting closer to the title, are these games, and if we don't get over this sort of funk where we can't go to these places and grind out results and get late goals, and because that's how Celtic have won so many titles recently. It's through scoring late goals and finding ways to win. We need to take this as a warning, need to take this as a lesson, and take it into future games where this is similar. Cause it won't just be away from home, it'll be at Ibrox too, and teams are going to sit in. We've got to find a way of breaking them down.
Yeah, very much so. And as you say, there were all of those sort of individual frustrations on the park of no one having a bit of creativity, no one trying anything different, and then all of that is it's kind of set against a backdrop of even more frustration of the fact that we had a chance already to get a points advantage on Celtic, which has been given up, and yes, we will be ahead of them on points by the time that they resume play after their COVID holiday. But there was a real chance to put some real pressure on them early doors, and to see it slip away like that is really, really bitter. Alec, we obviously, I don't think we'd be able to discuss Rangers dropping points at Livingston without at least addressing the issue of their pitch. It's already kind of been a point of discussion for a lot of people on forums and on Twitter and all the rest of it. to me, it seemed in particular, Philip Hollander seemed to really, really struggle with the pitch and reading the bounce of the ball. It seemed that all of our passes were slightly off. Everything was overhit or underhit. Everything was bouncing weird. It seems that time and again we're having discussions about plastic pitches.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a slightly different spin on things now. Can we still use this as an excuse for dropping points?
No, I think it's a terrible pitch. No, but that doesn't change the fact that we should know how to deal with it. Even if we got to the point where we have to get one of the plastic pitches at Murray Park, and just resurface it with linoleum and then gravel or whatever it is. I mean, the black specks, the black rubber that I used to have to dig out my trainers for years on end when I was playing five-a-sides at the pits at Townhead Interchange in Glasgow, paying a fiver to have a wee heart attack on a Thursday night with the boys from my work. That to see that in a Premier League, a Premiership pitch, it's consistently embarrassing. And I don't know, but we know what it's going to be like. We know it's going to be like that. I mean, it almost cost us £20 million in the first minute today when just out of nowhere, Alfie takes a tumble, and you're thinking Morelos has just done his leg in. He's twisted his ankle, or he's pulled a ligament or something. Luckily, he gets back up. But it's part of the whole Livingston experience, which we have experienced enough times now to know how to deal with it. I don't think we can offer that as an excuse. No, we've actually, I think we won there 3-0. The second time we went in Gerrard's first season, we won there 2-3 times last season. I know we certainly won there in the League Cup, and we won in the league, I think 2-0. The League Cup game was brutal, but it's just, but we got there in the end. But like, you're waking up this morning and you're thinking Celtic aren't playing, Hibs have drawn. So it's open for us just to go top of the league, nice and clear. And then you're switching on telly. Lyndon Dykes is away; he's not playing. And you're thinking, well, that's great, because he gave Hollander a bit of bother, serious bother in that League Cup game last season. And then you're reminded Robbie McCrory is unable to play because he can't play against his parent club, and it's a debutant goalkeeper, and you're thinking, come on, this is just. If Aribo had to miss a game, this is the game. Every problem you could think of it's almost like Rangers were teeing it up, or fate was teeing it up to show you that there are absolutely no excuses. And we just managed to, I don't know if it's paralysis by analysis. And I watched the highlights of Hibs putting 4 past Livingston on that same pitch last week, and I think it kind of explained a lot of the cross balls, because a lot of those goals Hibs scored against them just came from balls across, across their box. And I don't know if Rangers have overthought it and tried to do the same thing, and it's maybe not. Well, it is one natural game. We saw the second goal we scored against St Johnstone, but for me, it's a kind of microcosm of the last 2 seasons. It feels like it's an attitude thing. We've actually picked up more points in the first. That's 10 points we've taken from the first 4 games, which is again a steady improvement. First season, I think Stevie we drew at Aberdeen first game, then we won a game, then I think we lost at Parkhead. But we had Europe. It was given a sense of momentum in between these games with the whole European run. Was picking up at that point, and that seemed to be the kind of emphasis, and it was giving us some sort of momentum, and that's all we wanted under Steven Gerrard at first. And then last season we won our first 3 games. The first one was a last minute winner at Kilmarnock. We beat Hibs 6-1 in our second game. It was 2-1 at half time, kind of still in the balance. And the third game is escaping me just now, but it's a bit of a struggle. The game against St Mirren, where Barisic scored in 60 odd minutes kind of late on, and that was a bit tight at times as well. And then we lost to Celtic in our 4th game. So today we've actually gone on and 4 successive clean sheets, top of the league. But there's no Europe to explain why we've dropped points at Livingston. And the massive caveat to any sense of the other massive caveat to any kind of sense of progression is the fact that we're the ones chasing. In terms of in infrastructural terms, in terms of just trying to, in historic terms, Celtic are the ones that are in front. And there's a thing in sport where Celtic ones are so far in front. And there's a thing in sport where a consistent champion can almost deliberately have a setback and sit back and watch as their nearest opponent slips up on their own because they're so unused to making that final leap, to just winning for winning's sake. And with this Rangers team, we can fight tooth and nail from minute 1 to minute 95 if we're playing Celtic at Parkhead, Feyenoord in Rotterdam, Porto in Porto. You know, we get great results about Legia Warsaw. We're 2-0 down to Braga at home, and they're one of the best teams we've seen in years. And next thing, we're beating them 3-2, and we go over there and we play them off the park, and we just. But when it comes to us being favourites, just as when we changed the pace of the league race in the last game, the last Old Firm game of each of the last 2 years, when there's any sense that we are favourites and it's on us, we just stop. That team, we get bored after half an hour today. We get bored because it wasn't working, and it was like, yeah, we started going backwards, and then we had a wee burst of desperation just as we went into injury time, and that goalkeeper making his debut. By the time Barisic was curling free kicks into him, that boy's confidence was absolutely soaring because he was having a great game on his debut against Rangers. You know, it was all there for the taking. We need to maintain momentum. We need to do this more than Celtic need to do it. We fluffed the lines again. And the only thing for me is, at the end of the game, I thought, the Einstein definition of insanity meme was doing the rounds again on Rangers Twitter. We're doing the same thing all the time and expecting a different result. But I thought the captain and the manager's post-match interviews on Sky, at least I saw, were quite interesting. At first I was kind of annoyed at Tab because he seemed a bit too phlegmatic and quite kind of chuffed that we'd had a lot of the ball. And I thought, there's no room for being chuffed with that, Tab. It's what you do with it. I thought, how can he still not be getting it? But then when Stevie G came on, you know, a guy who absolutely has my trust, you know, and I know he's doing everything he can for Rangers, and I can't think of anybody else who could replace him. When he come on, and had the same, he wasn't throwing the players under the bus this time. There was none of that rage. I was expecting to see him like slating the team again for their attitude, but it wasn't there. So my only hope is he was quite kind of calm about it as well, you know, and back up the players. And my only hope is we've tried, you know, we're going back to the well. We're in the same situation we've been in so many times the past 2 years, where we're slipping up against fodder, against minnows. But Gerrard's refusing to lose the rag this time. And I don't know if it's just a case of we'll try and ease. I don't know how to describe this, but we'll try and just kind of take this one in the chin, not rock the boat too much internally, and we'll see how they progress from here. But I'm sick of having to wait. You know, it's just been a terrible day.
I think that's a very fair assessment of where we are, and it's difficult. I think because it's so early on in the season, and because Celtic have only played 2 games, it's difficult to try and accurately gauge how much optimism we had going into today for the remainder of the season, and then to gauge how much that optimism has been dented by today's result. David, Alec there's mentioned, you know, a number of things of why we were unable to get a result today, and a couple of us have mentioned so far the impact of the midfield 3, and obviously started out as Kamara, Jack, and Scott Arfield. Scott Arfield making his first start of the season in the absence of Joe Aribo. Now, it felt to me that Scott Arfield was somewhat anonymous whilst he was on the pitch, but Jack and Kamara were playing a very, very similar game. Both obviously did not want to be the one to make something happen, but instead wanted to sit deep and dictate play and keep things tidy and make sure that, you know, that we weren't caught out defensively. So is this a game where we really saw or felt the absence of Joe Aribo, and how much do you think we missed him today?
Well, I think Joe Aribo scored against Livingston last season at Tony Macaroni. And yeah, I think we lacked that, you know, attacking edge. But I like Arfield. I'm a fan of Arfield. I think he offers a lot. I think his attitude is such that he's probably a great player to have around the club. You know, someone that I think's a a good man, you know, a good Rangers player, solid professional. And yeah, I mean, today it just wasn't a good day for him. But I actually think last season he played his best stuff, and the season before, actually, latter stages of the season before, played his best stuff for us off the right and sort of inside forward position. So playing him as part of that midfield three in particular probably wasn't maybe the right call, or certainly not the right role. But then it was quite difficult to gauge what him and Hadji were actually doing. I know we spoke off air about, you know, the heat map that showed they were occupying pretty much the same areas, and for me, you know, Hadji's shown absolutely zero since the start of the season. And having spoken to, you know, a few mates, I think that's a feeling that's felt among the sport. You know, he's in every game, even the Aberdeen game, you know, the amount of things were bouncing off him. You know, his first touch was poor. He just wasn't involved in the game. And even the two games where we controlled them at home, you know, again, just not really in the game. Today was another example of that. You know, didn't really do a lot. And then, you know, you bring on Barker there, and, you know, for me, again, he's just not up to the required level. And again, I hate to have a go at him, because I think he seems like a good lad, you know, a professional player, and, you know, someone that really appreciates playing for the club, but he's just maybe not quite at the level that we need. And I just don't think it really gelled today. And I think Aribo is the type of player this season for us. Maybe not so much last season, but from what I've seen, he's turned into quite an influential player for us in that midfield. And it's maybe not even just what he's doing himself. I think he gives I think the players around him trust him, you know, and that's a great compliment of a young player like him. You get the feeling that the rest of the players trust him with the ball, because he keeps it so well, and he keeps things ticking over. And I think we did miss that today, because that's ultimately what we needed. We needed someone that could keep the ball ticking over in a forward fashion. We also needed someone that could give us a wee bit something special in the final third, and we didn't really have that coming from the midfield. Ryan, Jack, Kamara, you know, very similar players, good players, and players alike, but quite similar. And in games like that, you know, it's difficult because you're needing runners from midfield rather than players that are sitting. And I just don't think Kamara and Jack quite offer that. As I said at the top of the show, you know, there was a lot of times in the edge of the box where they just wouldn't pull the trigger, and maybe Aribo would have, or at least they would have found something a bit more, you know, substantial in that position. So yeah, I think Arfield for Aribo on this occasion just didn't quite work for the team in general, and I think we did miss him. There's no doubt we missed him, and hopefully, I mean, Gerard said that he would hopefully be back next week, and I think we could really do with that, because we need that influence on the midfield. And actually, you know, maybe we still need that just one more central midfielder that gives us that attacking option in these sorts of games.
I think you're absolutely right, David. I think we need to get another midfielder. That's one of the other things that was kind of give me a wee shred of optimism today, thinking, well, the transfer window's open for a long time yet. We can get somebody else in. We need to change things up. I just don't think we should be in a situation where we go to Livingston and missing Joe Aribo. I was same as yourself, exactly same as yourself. I'm thinking we're missing him big still today, but we shouldn't be relying on that. And I'm the same as everybody else. You're thinking, why are we playing with the two sitting midfielders? But I think that's a case of the fans just kind of, as fans, we're over-analysing it. I mean, what happened? I saw a couple of times Kamara is firing the ball in too fast. He was hitting balls in too quickly, hitting feet too quickly, or hitting the ball too long. And you're thinking, this is the same guy who scored. I mean, it was a deflected goal, but early on at Livingston League Cup game last season, he's basically scored the winner. As a sitting midfielder, and compared to the Ryan Jack that we saw, I mean, for example, Ross County last season, I remember the game up at Dingwall where he's curling them in from the edge of the box and all that. I think we all know where these players are ostensibly sitting when you put these players are ostensibly positioned when you put the positions down or the formation down on paper. But they should be able to, once basically the basics of football, one should be able to go and one should be able to cover. And I just don't know. I feel you're talking about Morelos as well. he's had a moment where we watched Tavernier putting a corner in against St Johnstone the other night, and Joe Aribo has just got across the defender and nodded it in, and yet Alfredo Morelos didn't seem able to do that today. He didn't seem able to get on his toes and just get across the defender. There was balls coming into him where he's just basically stood there and just letting the centre half get it. He's not moving at all. He might not be able to win the header, but if a bit of movement, you can create something. There could be a secondary chance off that. But also, by the same token, there's then another ball comes in and he's standing there as being at the back post you were talking about it. He's in plenty of space. He's got plenty of time, and he heads it over. There just seems to be a kind of attitude problem sometimes when it comes to these games, and I think it's watching the St Johnstone game and the St Mirren game, I'm taking more heart from the moments where we seem to be struggling and we seem to be getting into that kind of dwam, getting into that kind of mindset of it's not going our way, and then we do something about it. You know, the first 20 minutes against St Johnstone, they didn't get to they got to 19 minutes 56, and we got that free kick at the edge of the box, and then bang, Barisic puts it in and the pressure's off. And I'm loving that, because I know that the only problem this team has just now, the only problem that's stopping us pushing on to win the league, is when we're up against a low block, a doer, minnow, who doesn't want to come out and play football against us, or is playing a different type of football. I don't mean any disrespect, they're perfectly entitled to do that. And I'm actually enjoying those moments, because I think that's the one. I want to see signs that we can deal with this, and it seems to be a mental block as much as anything else. Because against St Mirren, for example, there was times where it just seemed like we were overwhelming them. We didn't even know what we were doing ourselves. It was just sheer enthusiasm, and everybody seemed to love being on the ball. And a goal was inevitable, because there was just such a pressure on the St Mirren back. And St Mirren they are worse than Livingston, but they're not that much worse. Livingston aren't much better than St Mirren, and I don't see why the guys can't go out there and just think, we have all the talent in the world, we're good at what we do, we can be heroes here. Just go for it. Just if it doesn't work, just go back to the well for more. And eventually, sheer pressure would tell. Livingston didn't. I mean, they had like a shot from their own half that nearly went in. McLaughlin was just alive to it. And then the guy goes through on goal. The guy Robinson went through on goal. I think it was the 90th minute, and he just slightly pulled his shot. But that actually amounted to the same amount of chances we had. Barisic's free kick. Fantastic save. It would have been a fantastic goal. Same as a fella shooting from halfway for Livingston. And then in the 93rd minute, I think it was Ryan Kent, the best move we had of the game, because Livingston had come out a wee bit, got a bit excited, and we went one end of the park to the other, and Kent just pulls it past the post. And we just shouldn't be in that situation where we're basically having as many attempts on goal as Livingston. We're capable of overwhelming teams to the point where they're putting the ball in their own net, as we did with Alfredo, caused an own goal for St Mirren. So it's just, for me, they don't seem to enjoy their football. And the set-up at the likes of Livingston puts them off. Don't get me wrong, we've taken as many points off Livingston in one league game as Celtic did in 2 trips to the Tony Macaroni last season. And we didn't need a 91st minute equaliser to do it. We're not going to get carried away here, but I just don't see why we don't seem to be enjoying our football, or capable of seeing that there's a great prize here. These guys just need to. If you told those guys today, all you've got to do is go out and beat Livingston and you're league champions, surely they would be able to do it. But they don't seem to be able to get it through their head. As you say, this is just the one last hurdle they've got to go over, and I think it's a mental hurdle.
It's a shame, because we've spoken a lot about the mentality over the last 99 shows. So it's disappointing to hear that it's a theme that's reached through to number 100. But it's obviously something that we discussed under Pedro, we discussed under Graham Murty, and we sincerely thought would be fixed under a winner and a motivator like Steven Gerrard. But David, if we take this back to Wednesday evening, when we had welcomed St Johnstone to Ibrox, to my mind, that was another game that started very slowly, that seemed to, St Johnstone set with a flat back 5, and it was all very compressed and it was all very tight, and they knew what their game plan was, which was to come to Ibrox and try and steal a point. But that game was changed, because this time Borna Barisic's free kick did find the top corner, whereas today it was palmed away. what effect did that have on the game on Wednesday night? Did that kind of serve to open up the game, or maybe give Rangers players a wee bit more confidence to maybe play more free-flowing football, or just maybe with a wee bit more freedom because of that goal?
Yeah, I think that initial breakthrough, gives the players confidence. But I actually thought the second goal was the key one for us on Wednesday night, because kind of everyone breathed a sigh of relief when we scored the second one. But yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing, the other sort of breaks you need. And listen, that wasn't a lucky break. That was an absolutely incredible piece of skill by Barisic, who has started incredibly well in this pre-season. And I think, we spoke a lot about players and clubs watching players, and I think any club watching him will be thinking that he is, a top talent who can go, as high as he likes. And I think he's now the player who we thought we were getting when he came in the first season. And I think he's now starting to show, the proper player on a consistent basis, which is great. But yeah, I mean, Wednesday night we started slow, got that breakthrough, scored another 2 good goals, played okay. Gerrard made 5 substitutes in on 60 minutes, and then the last 20 minutes of that game were probably technically worse than today. It was as if we just didn't know what we were doing at times on Wednesday night towards the end of the game. So yeah, I mean, it's quite difficult at the moment, because we have brought in a couple of players for decent amounts of money, if we're led to believe, and Roof and Eaton, and they need to get up to speed. And the only way they get up to speed is by playing games. So that means that they have to come on at certain times and get certain minutes under the belts. And I feel for them, because it's a difficult thing to do. Come into a team when the season's already started and try to hit the ground running. And certainly for Roof, that's been the case, where he's had to come in on Wednesday night. And the spotlight's on you there because you're sort of the big money signing everyone wants to see. And it's obviously strange times, because they're coming on and there's no crowd, there's no reaction when they come on. So you're not getting that extra little, buzz that you would get probably in your first game when there's 50,000 fans there. So it's been a strange one. I think Wednesday night, Gerrard made the decision at 3-0 to make all the changes, and then it just became a bit hodgepodge, for us for a while there. But yeah, as you say, I mean, that piece of individual skill from Barisic should opened up the game for us a bit, and maybe that's what we needed today. But certainly we can't rely on that every game, and I think we need to focus more on how we're going to break down these teams and how we're going to get ourselves up for it, I suppose. Because as Alec says, after 30 minutes today, he felt like that was it. It was the same old story. We need to stick at it a bit longer than that, because that's not the last of the sort of games we're going to have this season. And even St Johnstone on Wednesday, as you say, they came with a game plan in mind to frustrate, and luckily we managed to get over that. Whether the pitch, whatever, made a difference today, I don't know, but certainly we're going to have to get used to it. We're going to have to find a way, because as Alec says, we're going to be judged on these games, not the big games, because we've proved time and again that we're good in the big games. It's these sort of games that we need to win. And Alec mentioned there, if they were told that if they won the game today, they win the league. Ultimately, that is what they should be thinking, because history and certainly in Steven Gerrard's tenure, history suggests that we come unstuck when we play against the lesser teams. So, they should be going into every game like this thinking, right, if we win today, we're a step closer to at least pushing it to the very last day. Because if you're coming in head-to-head with Celtic, I think we've shown over the past 2 years that in those games we can, certainly hold it on. The results show that. So we're going to have to get in our heads that these games matter just as much as the big European or Old Firm ties.
Yeah, I mean, these games are the bread and butter of a Scottish Premiership season, aren't they? It's not the games against Celtic that define your season, really, when it comes to looking at the table at the end of the year. It's these games. It's how you can do against the the middling jobbers of the Scottish football world, and that's where we come up short, as you say, and that's what's really frustrating. David, just to finish quickly off on Borna Barisic, we've all mentioned kind of that he's had an excellent start to the season, and that's obviously been picked up by the media as well. Sky gave him a little bit of time this afternoon with his own little interview section. He was probably our best player on the park today, and probably the best player on the park as well on Wednesday. So, David, are you worried that, what with this being an extra long transfer window all the way through to October, do you have any concerns that it's going to be tough for us to keep hold of Borna Barisic?
Depends. I mean, it depends on a lot of factors. But if you trust what he says, he won't be leaving. I would hope he didn't. But certainly, I mean, I know we speak quite a lot in this podcast about players' worths and things like that. And he's fair enough. He's not won the league up here, and he's not won any silverware. But I think he's shown that as a great player, and that sort of set piece speciality isn't something that comes around all that often. So he's got that as well. So if it comes to a point where there are bids, I'd like to think they'll be substantial.
Yeah, you'd certainly hope so. I mean, he's proven himself to be one of the most important aspects of that squad, and as a starting international fullback for one of the top 3 nations globally, you think he would command a hefty fee, and hopefully, if there is any business to be done, it's done early enough to get a decent replacement in the door. Now, Alec, another player who is being linked with transfer speculation is Glenn Kamara. I thought that today Kamara was dreadful, to be honest with you. I thought it looked like he'd never passed a ball before. He couldn't make anything stick. He was afraid of taking a shot on. But I thought that on Wednesday he actually played one of his best games for Rangers against St Johnstone. In midweek there, he was very composed. He dictated play a lot. His passing was spot on, and he looked really good with the ball at his feet. So, Alex, there's rumours of a £10 million move for Glenn Kamara. Is that a fair price? It certainly would break the current record for Rangers sales. So is that a fair price? But also, what impact would it have on the squad to lose a player like Glenn Kamara?
I think it's more than a fair price. I don't think it's actually fair in whoever's bidding it. 10 million for Glenn Kamara, I would bite your hand off tomorrow, and I don't mean that as any disrespect to Glenn Kamara, who I think his case isn't helped by so much of the work that he does for us, and it's great work is kind of the low key, unspectacular stuff. He, as we know, he started superbly when he came to us at first. He has a wee tendency to kind of donner on the ball a bit too long at times, and he gets kind of caught in possession. We had a couple today. I think it was just part of the way the whole game was going today, and it wasn't just Glenn Kamara. We're coming back to the halfway line, and we're kind of stroking the ball about across the kind of centre of the park, and Livingston are nearly taking it off us and going through on goal. But I think, as I say, that's part of the whole kind of is the general malaise today. But I think when he's on his game, he's fantastic. But when he goes off his game, it can be fatal for us. I think I just remember the Scottish Cup game at Hearts, particularly bad. But even as I'm saying that, I'm thinking it's just every time I try to criticise the guy or think of reasons that it would be good to get rid of him, it's just in performances that the whole team has really been off the boil. But I think 10 million would be absolutely fantastic, and I would have much more worry about losing Barisic than I would about losing Glenn Kamara. And it's a terrible. I don't mean that disrespectfully to the guy. I think he's done fantastically by his own standards, and he's been key to us in a lot of games. And I thought it was interesting the St Johnstone game the other night. He seemed to spend the second half kind of basically playing at left back. He's covering for him. I think we just decided to let Borna play, as a kind of outside left. I think Borna come back into his own half about 2 times. It's hard to tell when you're not at the game. You can't see the whole pitch all the time. We're just watching it on Rangers TV. But it summed up the fact that Kamara can adapt, and he can do all sorts of kind of utility jobs in midfield. And when he's on his game, he's not too bad going forward either. But maybe I'm just in a bad mood about today. But I would bite your hand off for 10 million for Glenn Kamara, I'm afraid.
No, I have to say I agree, and it's strange. It's a strange sort of phenomenon actually that when he's having a bad game, the rest of the team's also having a bad game, and I wonder if there's any kind of correlation there that when he's not performing in that role, the whole team suffers, which is a lot of pressure on him, obviously, but that's part and parcel of the role that he's playing. Alec, I'll stay with yourself if I may. Mention Borna Barisic there, and it's no surprise that we've been talking about him quite a lot this evening after the contribution that he's made over the first 4 games of the season. But on Wednesday evening, obviously he scores a wonderful goal. He then provides a lovely assist to Ryan Kent for a really nice second goal. That really, really well built up team play, and Joe Aribo again had a good hand in that one. But we had at midweek there Tavernier assisting the third, so that's a goal and 2 assists from our fullbacks to cover all 3 goals. Now Sky kind of covered this at the start of the game today, how far up the fullbacks are pushing, and obviously it's part and parcel of the modern game. But it seems that the fullbacks are playing with even more attacking aggression this season than they did last season. Is that something that you've noticed, and is that something that you would agree is a good approach to Scottish football?
Absolutely. I think we need all the weapons we can get when it comes to games like today. I think I found myself thinking about Stephen Whittaker, the Stephen Whittaker dilemma the other night, when Borna, who was absolutely fantastic in the first half and should have been played in a couple of times in the second half, but his game kind of went down a wee pace in the second half, as did the whole team's substitutions didn't help. But when he was just kind of hugging the byline in the St Johnstone half, he wasn't as effective, and he needs that kind of. I've always got a theory with these kind of like Alan Hutton, and I say Stephen Whittaker. There was always a dilemma. He's so skillful, so we just stick him in midfield, but he didn't seem to be as effective when he didn't have that kind of head of steam that fullbacks get when they're kind of bombing on from their own half. They do that kind of slaloming thing rather than being able to beat somebody from a kind of standing start. And I think it's part of the whole Liverpool light kind of approach. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson, we've got our fullbacks, and Gerrard likes to play the same way, and he's got them bombing on, and the two of them are frighteningly accurate at times with their balls into the box, and I think they're lovely footballers going forward as well. We know Tav has been an easy scapegoat, that back post thing it's dogged him defensively in the years, but I think that's part of the kind of compartmentalisation of departments in a football team by older guys like myself, who just think defence should be defending, the midfield should be doing its bit, and the strikers are out. It's a holistic approach in modern football, and I think that's why you find today, when we stop attacking with the same intensity after half an hour, Livingston start getting little sniffs at the back. So I think it's our defence as attack, if you like, and vice versa. And Barisic and Tavernier are, I think, 2 of our most vital players, just to the whole plan and what Steven Gerrard's trying to do.
I think that's a very, very fair assessment. David, very quickly on the St Johnstone game in midweek, it was our first chance to see David Itten and Kamar Roof playing together. And what before we got to see them on the pitch, we'd obviously had all of the Football Manager fans telling us that they're very, very different players, and actually it struck me when I got to see them on the pitch just how different those two are as players, and Kamar Roof was seen to be dropping back a lot deeper to come and collect the ball, whereas Cedric Itten was much more of a conventional striker. We still have a certain Alfredo Morelos on the books and still starting games, and the interest from Leo seems to have cooled as they brought in another striker and a fair outlay on him. So there seems now to be a reasonable chance that we're going to close this transfer window with Morelos still here. How do you see the 3 of them fitting into any kind of system? And surely when you have 3 players of this type, naturally someone's always going to be disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we'd spoken about Roof on the podcast. That was the night we thought Morelos was going. I was actually interrogated by Euros, like in Frost Nixon, when I said that Roof would have been a good signing for us. But certainly, I see him as being the main striker. If Morelos leaves, I see Roof being the obvious sort of first choice. And I think Eaton's probably been brought in as a maybe looking to the future. Perhaps I don't see him being the one that starts every week. Maybe in the future, but I don't think that would be this season. I think Roof would have been the one that was brought in with the thinking, that he could become the successor to Morelos, if you will. But if Morelos stays, then it's his jersey to lose in many ways. And if he plays, like he played against St Mirren last weekend, then there's no, or even just how he played at the beginning of last season, there's no reason why he shouldn't keep the jersey. But if he plays the way he played this last season, then it's up for grabs. So do I see them fitting in the same team? Probably not. I don't know if that would work. The only way it would maybe work is if Ruth played off the right like he did at Leeds the odd time and Anderlecht. He can play there. And certainly when he came on Wednesday night, he was almost playing behind Eaton up front. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't see that happening too often. I think it's going to be a case of this is the system that Gerrard plays. There's one main striker, and that's it really. But if Roof proves himself to be useful on the right hand side, that's an area of the pitch where we haven't been the strongest over the past couple of years. So perhaps there's a way of fitting two of them in. But certainly, Morelos has earned the right over the past 2 years to keep the jersey until a point where it looks like his form is letting him down or injury. So we'll see whether they fit in the same team. I'm not so sure, but I think Morelos is jersey to lose.
Yeah, Chris Boyd made a decent point on Sky this afternoon, which is a wee bit of an oxymoron, but we'll plough ahead anyway. He made the point that it's no surprise to see that Morelos started playing better when Roof and Itten were brought in. So he's finally got some competition, and he realises two things. If the Lille interest is cooled, then he needs to show someone else that they should come and take him. But also he needs to keep playing and he needs to keep scoring and to keep the other two out of the side, and he won't get his move if he sat on the bench. So it's now very much in Morelos' best interest to be the best player that he can be. So hopefully that we as a club can benefit from that. I still don't think we'll see him. I suspect we'll see him leave the club before the end of October, but I think now we're in a better position that if that is the case, we have coverage and I feel a lot more comfortable with the idea of him leaving than I did 3 or 4 weeks ago. Gents, before we finish, I'd like to maybe try and add some light relief and look at the misfortune that's being suffered by two of our favourite clubs, Celtic and Aberdeen, who have, let's be frank, completely embarrassed themselves and let the rest of Scottish football down. Scottish football has, come back and started a new season, whilst the whole of society has a huge amount of uncertainty thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic. There's very strict guidelines in place, and representatives of those two football clubs have entirely embarrassed themselves and should be ashamed of their actions. Now, Alex, the one question that's burning in my mind is it possible for a football player based in Scotland to visit Spain overnight during the week and have no one from their club know about it?
Yes, if he plays for Celtic. And I'm quite frankly, I'm disgusted at your attitude there, Ross, because this wasn't Aberdeen and Celtic. This was volleyball and goalie and the whole of Scottish football. I think that's you need to remember. It's all of us that are responsible for this. This isn't like tax, where every club in the land was trying to pay as much tax as possible. The chairman of every other club in the land were employing chief executives with the sole remit of making sure they paid every single bit of tax possible to the HMRC, and it was only Rangers that were doing something to try and save a bit of money in that respect. No, this is COVID, and we should all, Scottish football should all come together, and we should just hope that Alfredo Morelos is caught going to Colombia for a wee fly visit, and then we can start persecuting particular clubs. It's been an absolute joke, the whole reaction to it, the attempt to make it about the whole of Scottish football. It sticks in my craw. People are dying from COVID. We had our tax avoidance extrapolated to killing your granny because Rangers failed to pay tax, and that was affecting that was what caused the cutbacks on emergency services. That meant the ambulance couldn't get to your granny's door in time and save her life. That was big bad Rangers. But when people are actually dying in their thousands, and Celtic and Aberdeen players are basically assisting in that, it's the whole of Scottish football's fault. It's just been embarrassing, mate.
Are you surprised at, if we focus on Celtic for a moment, Celtic Football Club's response to Bolingoli has been very much to throw the player under the bus and say it was all him. We had no idea. I mean, Neil Lennon was using all sorts of colourful language to explain his thoughts, which makes you think that surely they did not know, because if they did know, how bad will that look?
Neil was morally offended, Ross. He was morally offended by what had happened there. I don't know if it was yourself. A pod a few months ago was talking about how they were quite happy to claim the league title and pose with the championship trophy in a forest while people were dying. They were quite happy to, make sure that they got that trophy. That was their only concern. But now they just seem to be, just so appalled that they'll throw a bit part reserve team player under they throw him under the plane. Would be more accurate. It's offensive. And I'd actually have some sympathy with Celtic and Aberdeen if you were talking to me before 2012. My every instinct with me was, I was watching the UK headlines the other night, and Tuesday night were all about the SNP's, reverse U-turn on the education, on the exam results. But the SNP themselves had a press conference that day, and the first three journalists that they wanted questions from were Chris McLaughlin, Big Rahman from STV, and Brian Swanson for Sky Sports News, and they were quite happy to throw football under the bus as well. But after everything that happened to us and the way we were kind of demonised and treated, it's not the crime or the breach of regulations that's the problem in Scottish football. It's the hysteria and moral panic you can create around it. And I feel as if it could quite easily, a Rangers player could quite easily be caught out next, breaching COVID protocols. But until they are, I can't actually give a straight, kind of sober opinion in this because of everything we went through in 2012 as a support and as a club.
And the thing is, there will be so many folk listening who have had family members contract this illness, and there are people who contribute to this podcast who have had family members affected by this illness and hospitalised. And Colin's wife works in a hospital, and her world, I know, has been turned upside down by this illness. So it's had a monstrous impact. And to that end, were a Rangers player to do what Bolingoli or the Aberdeen 8, as they're affectionately called, have done, I would be livid, absolutely furious, and it's the same reaction whether it's one of my players or another set of players. It's unacceptable conduct, and it's putting folk at risk. Now, David, the position that we're in is that I believe the Scottish Football Association are investigating this at the player level and at the club level, and formally sanctions for the club have not yet been ruled out. Now, we live in a world where a club can be punished for the actions of the support. surely it's only right that the club can also therefore be punished for the act of the players who are formal employed representatives of the club. Now, if that's the case, what punishment, A, do you think is appropriate? But B, maybe more importantly, what punishment do you expect for Celtic and Aberdeen?
I think that if there was going to be a punishment handed out, probably a fine of some sort would be fair enough, I suppose. Just because, you know, they've wasted a lot of money, you know, for fans. And this was my point last week. You know, the whole world, you know, it's not just Scotland, it's not just the UK. The whole world has been locked down for, you know, the best part of the year now. And we've all had to abide by certain rules, you know, in our daily lives. And fair enough. I mean, life has some semblance of normality for us now in terms of, you know, shops being reopened, pubs, you know, people starting to go back to work and things like that. But you know, these footballers are getting paid, you know, a lot of money. Even the Aberdeen players, you know, the ones that were seen out, you know, I would assume they're some of the highest earners at Aberdeen. So they're all players that you know are being paid substantial sums of money to play football. Now, to then completely disregard not only the league rules, the government rules, and their own club's rules, but to actually end up, you know, with a situation where games are being cancelled. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I've got loads of sympathy for other clubs fans, because that would just be stupid. I don't. But I know for a fact if I'd paid money, you know, season tickets, or just as you go games on, you know, Celtic, Aberdeen TV, whatever, and then that happened and the games get cancelled, you know, I would expect you just expect a bit more from the players to show a bit more respect to the game and a bit more respect to you know the fans who are still putting their money in the pocket to watch games, even though they can't go to them, you know. And that's the thing, you've got to show A, respect to the fans, B, you know, they're not just risking the health of their own players and their own teammates and staff. You know, that could become an issue in the wider community, because you get guys there that'll be, you know, mixing with a whole lot of people, who'll then maybe mixing with a whole lot of people who, you know, that's how it starts. And you know, complete disregard for the rules and what was in place, and that's the most disappointing thing. Now, as for what I expect, I really don't know. Will they sanction them? You'd like to think so, but you know, after what we've seen during this lockdown, you know, Scottish football, you know, it's so unpredictable in terms of the way it's governed. So I don't know. You know, it's two clubs there, so you know, if you throw the book at one, you've got to do it with the other. You know, so it'll be interesting to see what they do. I think personally, I don't know what you guys think, but certainly a fine to me would be fair if they were going to sanction them, because I think it's been you know, regardless whether it was one player or 8 or, you know, whatever, the fact is it was a player representing that club. And as you say, Ross, you know, clubs are punished for the actions of fans, which both sides of the rule have seen. And you know, that's not something the club can control necessarily. So the club should be able to control the players, and if they can't, and certainly if they can't drive home enough the message that these things aren't acceptable, then yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's the way of the world, and they probably should be sanctioned. Whether they will be or not, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see as to whether they will be or not. What's maybe alarming or gives me a wee bit of anxiety is the SNP or the Scottish Government's line is that, right, now that Celtic have done it, there's your line in the sand. And if, you know, we'll let that go because you're all getting used to the rules, but anything else going forward, we'll really punish that. So it sets it up very nicely for whoever the next club is to get caught, to get a whacking great sanction, and maybe even sort of see that the government temporarily halt Scottish football again. What I hope that this is done, first of all, from a personal or a selfish perspective, I hope that this has made Steven Gerrard and the directors or Stuart Robertson or whoever it might be at Rangers sit the players down and say, right, they've been caught and they've embarrassed themselves and embarrassed their club. We do not let that happen. This does not happen here. But thinking about it, I hope that's happened at every other club as well, because not just for the kind of self-interest, but for the public safety. You hope that they're sitting them down and going, that's embarrassing. They've been caught out. Don't do the same thing, because you're putting folk at risk. You're putting football at risk, but you're putting the wider public at risk. So just cut it out and don't get caught doing the same thing. We'll have to wait and see. We said at the start of this season that we don't know how long we're going to have football for. There's a very good chance that this season will be interrupted with a few starts and stops. We don't know. And this was always likely to happen, was that folk would be caught breaking the rules. We'll have to wait and see what happens going forward. We just have to hope that football can carry on for as long as possible, and that the players really do get a grip and realise that they have responsibilities to the wider public, and that they cannot go around acting as if they are immune from this because they are healthy and they are unlikely to be as affected as other people, because unfortunately that's not how the world works. Listen, gents, I'm very conscious that we have gone over the allotted hour that we usually try and stick to, so I'm going to wrap things up there. A difficult day for us all here in the Rangers family, so to try and make sense of that result today. But I'd just like to sort of say once again a massive thank you to everyone who's been listening to the show, whether you're with us for the first time or for the 100th time. We really do appreciate your support. I'd like to say thanks as well to David and to Alex for their wonderful insight as always, and it's great for them to give up their Sunday evenings to come and blather about Rangers with me. The show will be back from next Sunday, hopefully with a slightly sunnier mood from whoever's in the hot seat that time. Other than that, please do head over to the website at www.gersnet.co.uk and take in all the great content that you can get over there. If you've not signed up to the forum yet, please do so and catch us all there. The only other thing for me to say is please stay safe, please look after each other, and have a great week. Bye for now.